Hi, I'm Dr. Mark DeLawyer. I'm a lecturer in the Communication Studies Department at the University of South Dakota. And today I'm going to be talking about selecting a thesis for a persuasive speech. Now, this can be a bit of a challenging process because there's a lot of information out there, a lot of topics, and it can be hard to figure out what we want to say in our persuasive speech. So today I want to give you a way to make that process a little bit easier. As we do that, we will hope to also contribute to social discourse by providing some solutions to some difficult issues that we face. To address the selection of a persuasive speech thesis, we can also borrow from argumentation. And argumentation provides us with a term, which is issue. And in argumentation, what an issue is a place where arguments clash. So let's look at the process for identifying issues. Identifying issues is actually a fairly simple process. The first thing that we need to do to identify issues is to list all of the arguments from each side of a debate. Once we do that, we can identify the places where the arguments clash. That's where we're going to find our issues. And then after we have identified those places where they clash, we will phrase our issues as questions. So let's look at an example of how to identify an issue. The first step, as I said, is to lay out the arguments from each side. In the interest of time, I'm going to take a topic, the death penalty, but I'm not going to look at every single argument related to the death penalty. I'm only going to look at a few of the different arguments from each side of the debate. On the pro side, people often argue that the death penalty deters crime. Another argument that they make is that killing someone without justification is one of the worst acts that a person can commit, and therefore the death penalty is a right punishment for murder. Another argument from the pro side is that the death penalty makes society safer for the average innocent citizen. And then finally, we will hear the argument that technology has made the execution of the death penalty a humane process. On the con side, we often hear arguments that the death penalty takes innocent lives because people are wrongly convicted and then put on death row. Another argument from the con side is that murderers do not consider the consequences of their actions, and therefore the death penalty does not deter crime. A third argument that comes from the con side is that the death penalty is cruel. And another argument is that it's horrible to kill somebody, even if doing so is the punishment for murder. So if we look at the points of conflict that come out of these different arguments from the two sides, we can identify right off the bat that there's an issue related to whether or not the death penalty deters crime. Another issue is whether or not the death penalty protects innocent lives. On the con side, people say that the death penalty takes innocent lives because people are wrongly convicted. On the pro side, the argument is that the death penalty protects innocent citizens. And then a third issue is that the death penalty is or is not cruel. So now that we've identified what the points of conflict are, we can actually move into the phrasing of our issues. And remember that the phrasing of issues comes in the form of a question. So the first one would be, does the death penalty deter crime? Another would be that a question of whether the death penalty protects innocent lives. And then a third question would be, is the death penalty cruel? Once we've identified these questions, we can use them to move toward our thesis. We have several different options for this. One, we can use our reasoning and evidence to see if one side is right on one of those questions or not. So an example of that would be to look at all of the different issues, all the evidence that is available, and argue that executing someone does not cause them to suffer, if that's what the preponderance of evidence suggests. Another way of approaching this is to identify areas of common ground for compromise. For example, the thesis might be to propose the use of the death penalty only in cases where clear DNA evidence is available. This obviously gets at the issue of whether or not we're taking innocent lives. If we can use DNA evidence to prove that someone is guilty, then we're not taking an innocent life. And a third way of using issues is to find alternatives that address concerns of each side of the debate. So for example, we might have a thesis that offers a program that reduces violent crime without the use of the death penalty. Obviously, the pro side of the death penalty argues that we need to reduce violent crime. But if we can address that issue of violent crime in a way that doesn't include the death penalty, then maybe both sides are happy. The result of this process is that we get a strong, impactful thesis that moves society forward by identifying solutions to hard topics. So give this process a try, and good luck with that thesis.